Dennis Webb pushed his cleaning cart down the empty corridor, the wheels squeaking softly against the polished floor. The third shift meant fewer people to avoid, fewer disgusted looks when they saw a human doing menial work. He did not mind the silence. After 2 years on Galactic Council Central Station, he had learned that invisible was safer. The residential wing housed the galaxy's most powerful beings. Diplomats, warriors, merchants who controlled entire star systems. They barely noticed the middle-aged human who cleaned their floors and emptied their waste bins. That was fine with Dennis. He needed this job. His daughter Sarah was studying medicine back on Earth, and someone had to pay for it. He had been a pediatric nurse once, before the economy collapsed, before humans joined the galactic community and discovered they had nothing valuable to offer except cheap labor. His nursing license meant nothing out here. Different species, different biology. So he cleaned floors and told himself it was honest work. The Drakari had arrived 3 days ago. Everyone on the station knew it. You could not miss them. Emperor Drazen stood nearly 12 feet tall, covered in deep crimson scales that gleamed like polished metal. His guards were only slightly smaller, breathing smoke when they were annoyed. The entire dragon delegation moved through the halls like they owned the universe. Maybe they did. Their military fleet protected half the known galaxy. Dennis had seen the Emperor's son on his first night. The young dragon was small, maybe 4 feet tall, with scales that should have been bright gold but looked dull and patchy. Prince Torin. The boy had been sitting alone in the residential garden, staring at the artificial stars projected on the ceiling. Dennis had smiled at him while passing through. The child had looked surprised, like no one usually acknowledged him. Tonight, Dennis found the young prince in the same spot. Torin sat on a bench designed for species much larger than him, his feet dangling above the ground. His breathing sounded wrong, too fast, too shallow. Dennis slowed his cart. He should not interfere. He should definitely not interfere. But 20 years of nursing instincts did not just disappear because he carried a mop instead of a stethoscope. The boy's scales were definitely discolored. His eyes looked glazed. He was drinking from a water container that seemed far too large for him. Gulping desperately. "Are you all right?" Dennis asked quietly. Torin jerked his head up. His golden eyes struggled to focus. "I am fine." Warriors do not complain, the phrase sounded rehearsed. Something an adult had told him to say. Dennis recognized that tone. He had heard it from children trying to be brave when they were actually terrified. "You do not look fine," Dennis said, moving closer. "Have you been feeling sick?" "Weakness is not permitted." Torin's voice was barely a whisper. "Father says only the strong deserve respect." Dennis knelt down, bringing himself to eye level with the child. Up close, he could smell something sweet on the boy's breath. His medical training kicked in immediately. Excessive thirst, sweet breath smell, lethargy, discolored skin. If this was a human child, he would suspect diabetic ketoacidosis. A life-threatening condition, but this was not a human child. This was an alien. Different biology, different metabolism. He could be completely wrong. "When did you start feeling bad?" Dennis asked. Torin hesitated. 4 days. "But the physicians examined me. They said I was healthy. They said I was imagining problems because I wanted attention." The young dragon's voice cracked. "Am I imagining it?" "No," Dennis said firmly. "You are not imagining anything. Your body is telling you something is wrong." Heavy footsteps approached. Dennis stood quickly as a Drakari guard appeared. Sethra, the prince's primary guardian. She was 10 feet of muscle and scales and barely contained fire. "Move away from the prince, human." Her voice rumbled like distant thunder. "He is sick," Dennis said. "He needs medical attention." Sethra snorted smoke from her nostrils. "The court physicians have examined him. There is nothing wrong. He is simply soft. Too much time with tutors, not enough combat training." She focused on Torin. "Get back to your quarters. Your father expects strength, not whining." The young prince slid off the bench, stumbling slightly. He walked away without looking back, each step seeming to require enormous effort. Dennis watched him go, his chest tight with frustration. He wanted to argue. He wanted to grab Sethra and make her understand. But he was nobody. A human janitor. What did he know about dragon biology? He returned to his cart and continued cleaning. But he could not stop thinking about Torin, about the sweet smell on his breath, about how confused and weak he had looked. Over the next 2 nights, Dennis made excuses to clean near the residential garden. Each night, Torin looked worse. His scales were losing their shine. He moved like every step hurt. But his guardians ignored him, and the court physicians insisted nothing was wrong. On the 4th night, Dennis found the hallway near the Drakari quarters empty. Strange. There were usually guards everywhere. He pushed his cart forward, uneasy settling in his stomach. Then he saw Torin. The young prince was lying on the floor, barely conscious. His breathing was rapid and shallow. His eyes were half closed. Dennis dropped to his knees beside the child. "Torin, can you hear me?" The prince's eyes fluttered. "Tried to find help. Everyone in meeting. So tired." Dennis pressed his hand against Torin's scales. They were cold, too cold. The sweet smell on his breath was overwhelming now. He looked around frantically. No guards, no physicians. No one who would listen to a human janitor. Torin was dying. Right here. Right now. Dennis stood and ran toward the guard station at the end of the hall. 2 Drakari warriors stood there talking in their harsh, clicking language. "The prince needs help," Dennis shouted. "He has collapsed in the hallway." One guard looked at him with disdain. "The prince is in his quarters." "No, he is not." "He is dying," the second guard growled. "Do not create drama, human. Return to your duties before we report your interference. Please, just look. We will not be ordered by a cleaner. Leave now." Dennis ran back to Torin. The child's breathing was getting weaker. His eyes were closed now. This was it. The moment that would either save a life or destroy his own. Dennis had no authority. No permission. By galactic law, touching royalty without consent was assault. He could be executed, but he was a nurse before he was a janitor. He had taken an oath once in what felt like another lifetime. First, do no harm. That meant doing something when a child was dying, even if the cost was everything. Dennis lifted Torin into his arms. The young dragon was surprisingly light, his bones hollow like a bird's. He weighed less than a human child of similar size. "I am sorry," Dennis whispered. "I am sorry if I'm wrong, but I cannot let you die." He began to run. The service corridors were narrow and poorly lit, designed for maintenance workers who were supposed to stay out of sight. Dennis ran through them with Torin's limp body in his arms, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Behind him, alarms started blaring. The guards had finally checked on the prince. Dennis had maybe 5 minutes before security locked down the entire station. The human medical bay was 3 levels down and half a kilometer away. He would never make it through the main corridors. They would stop him, arrest him, take Torin away while they argued about jurisdiction and protocol, and by then the child would be dead. He reached a maintenance shaft and nearly collided with Rodriguez, another human cleaner. The older man's eyes went wide when he saw what Dennis was carrying. "Are you insane?" Rodriguez hissed. "He is dying. I need to get him to Patricia. You are carrying the Dragon Emperor's son through the service tunnels. They will execute you." "They will execute me anyway if he dies while I am standing around." Dennis shifted Torin's weight. "Can you open the express shaft?" Rodriguez stared at him for a long moment. Then he pulled out his maintenance override card and swiped it across the panel. The shaft door hissed open. "You better be right about this, Webb, because if you are wrong, every human on this station will pay for it." Dennis stepped into the shaft and began descending the ladder one-handed, holding Torin against his shoulder with the other arm. The young dragon was barely breathing now. His body felt too cold. Security announcements echoed through the walls. "All personnel, be alert for a human male carrying a Drakari child. Detain on sight. Use of force is authorized." Dennis reached the 3rd level and kicked open the access door. The human residential section was small and cramped compared to the alien quarters. Humans were recent additions to galactic society. They got the leftover spaces, the corners no one else wanted. The medical bay was just a single room with outdated equipment. Earth could not afford to send better. Dr. Patricia Okonkwo was reviewing charts when Dennis burst through the door. "Dennis, what are you doing?" Patricia stood quickly, then saw what he was carrying. "Oh my God, is that Prince Torin? He is in diabetic ketoacidosis. At least I think he is. His symptoms match perfectly." Patricia stared at him like he had grown a second head. "Dennis, you cannot just bring an alien royal here without permission. Do you have any idea what will happen to us? What will happen is he will die if we do nothing." Dennis laid Torin on the examination table. "I worked pediatrics for 20 years, Patricia. I know what I am seeing. Excessive thirst, sweet breath, altered consciousness. His body cannot process something and it is poisoning him. Patricia hesitated, her fear warring with her medical training. Then she moved to the scanner and began running it over Torrens' body. His biochemistry is completely different from ours. I have no baseline for Drakari children, but you can see if something is out of balance, right? The scanner beeped and displayed results. Patricia's face went pale. His blood chemistry is a disaster. Multiple systems are shutting down. Whatever is happening, it is killing him. So help me fix it. With what? I do not have medications for Drakari biology. I do not even know if human treatments will work or make things worse. Dennis looked at Torrens' still face. The child who had been ignored by everyone who should have protected him. The boy who had been taught that admitting pain was weakness. We have to try, Dennis said. We adapt human insulin protocols. Start conservative. Monitor his response. It is better than watching him die. Patricia took a deep breath. If we are wrong, we could kill him faster. If we do nothing, he dies anyway. At least this way he has a chance. She nodded slowly and began pulling supplies from the medical cabinet. I will need you to monitor his vital signs. Tell me immediately if anything changes. They worked together, calculating dosages based on body mass and adjusting for what they guessed about Drakari metabolism. Patricia administered the first injection while Dennis held Torrens' claw, feeling how cold the scales were. Come on, kid, Dennis whispered. You are stronger than they think. You just need a little help. For 5 agonizing minutes, nothing changed. Then Torrens' breathing seemed to slow slightly, becoming less desperate. His body temperature started rising back toward normal ranges. It is working, Patricia breathed. Dennis, it is actually working. The door exploded inward. Emperor Drazen filled the doorway, too large for the human-sized entrance. He had to bend almost double to enter. Behind him, a dozen Drakari guards tried to fit into the small medical bay. The Emperor's scales were smoking with barely contained fire. His eyes blazed with rage. Which of you touched my son? Dennis stepped forward, putting himself between Patricia and the Emperor. I did, he was dying. Your guards would not listen. You assaulted a prince. You will be executed for this crime. Then execute me, but let the doctor finish treating him first. Drazen moved forward, and Dennis was certain he was about to die, but Patricia's voice cut through the tension. Your Majesty, your son was in critical condition. His body was shutting down. This man saved his life. My physicians examined him. They found nothing wrong. Your physicians were wrong. Patricia pulled up the scans on her display. Look at these readings. His metabolic system was in complete failure. Another hour and the damage would have been irreversible. The Emperor stared at the data. His rage seemed to flicker with something else. Confusion, maybe fear. Torren was dying. His voice was quieter now. Yes, Dennis said, and everyone told him he was fine, that he was weak, that real warriors do not complain. So he stopped asking for help. Drazen turned to look at his son. Torren's breathing was steady now. His scales were starting to regain some of their color. The Emperor's massive hand reached out, hovering over the child, but not quite touching. He will recover? Drazen's voice was rough. If we can continue treatment, yes, Patricia said, but he will need ongoing care. This is a chronic condition, not a one-time illness. The Emperor stood there, this massive being who commanded fleets and terrified entire species, looking lost and uncertain. I nearly killed my own son, he whispered. By teaching him that strength means silence. One of the guards spoke urgently in the Drakari language. Drazen responded sharply and the guard backed away. The Emperor looked at Dennis. You will be detained while the council investigates. But you will not be harmed. Not yet. I understand. I do not think you do. Drazen's voice was heavy. You saved my son's life. But you have also challenged every principle our people hold sacred. I do not know whether to thank you or kill you. Torren's eyes fluttered open. He looked around weakly, confused by the crowd in the small room. Then his gaze found Dennis. The kind cleaner, Torren whispered. You came. Of course I did, Dennis said softly. The young prince's eyes closed again, but this time he was sleeping peacefully. The crisis had passed. Emperor Drazen stared at his son for a long moment. Then he turned and left without another word. The guards remained, weapons drawn but uncertain. Dennis looked at Patricia. She was shaking but trying to hide it. Well, she said, That went better than expected. We are still alive. Give it time, Dennis replied. The hard part comes next. 2 guards stood outside Dennis's quarters, watching him like he might explode at any moment. They had given him a small room in the detention wing, which was better than a cell but not by much. Through the narrow window he could see supply ships docking at the station. Life continued as normal for everyone except him. The door chimed and Ambassador Lynn Howard entered. She was a tired-looking woman in her 50s, who had been trying to improve human standing in the galaxy for 3 years with limited success. She looked even more exhausted than usual. "You should have called me," she said, sitting down heavily, "before you grabbed the prince." "I could have tried to help." "There was no time," Dennis said. "He was dying. I believe you. The problem is that half the Galactic Council does not. They think you are either insane or trying to start an incident." She pulled out a datapad. The formal charges are assault on a royal child, unauthorized medical treatment of a protected individual, and violating diplomatic protocols. Any one of these could get you executed. But Torin is alive. That is the only reason you are not already dead. Lynn rubbed her eyes. Emperor Drazen has not pressed charges yet. But the Council is demanding a trial anyway. They say allowing this behavior sets a dangerous precedent. Precedent for what? Saving children? Precedent for humans questioning authority. Lynn's voice was bitter. "You have to understand, Dennis. Most species see us as laborers, servants. The idea that a human janitor might know better than alien physicians offends them on a fundamental level." A soft knock interrupted them. Patricia entered, looking worried. "They are moving Torin back to the Drakari quarters. I tried to explain that he needs monitoring, but they will not let me continue his care." "Can their physicians handle it now?" Dennis asked. "If they follow my protocols, yes, but I do not know if they will." She sat down next to Lynn. "I ran more scans before they took him. Dennis, at least 12 other young Drakari on this station show similar symptoms. This is not a unique case." Dennis felt his stomach drop. 12 children? That I could identify without invasive scans. There could be more. Patricia's hands were shaking. "I tried to tell the Drakari medical staff. They dismissed me, said their children are healthy and I am overstepping, because admitting you are right means admitting they have been letting children die." Lynn said quietly. "That is not something a proud warrior culture can accept easily." The door opened again without warning. A crystalline being entered, its body reflecting light in fractured rainbows. Commander Vril, the council investigator assigned to Dennis's case. "Mr. Webb, I need to ask you some questions." Vril's voice had no emotion, just cold logic. "Why did you touch Prince Torin without authorization?" "He was unconscious in a hallway. I tried to get help from the guards. They refused to even look. The guards have submitted statements saying you were being hysterical and making wild accusations. They believed you were trying to create drama. A child was dying. That is not drama." Vril tilted its crystalline head. "How did you know Prince Torin was dying?" "You are not a physician. You have no training in Drakari biology. I was a pediatric nurse for 20 years. I recognize the symptoms. From human children. The prince is not human. Biology has common patterns across species. Metabolic disorders present similarly. I made an educated guess based on experience." "A guess." Vril's voice somehow made the word sound damning. "You assaulted royalty based on a guess." "I saved a life based on training and observation." The investigator pulled up holographic displays. "I have reviewed the security footage. You attempted to alert guards. They did refuse to investigate. However, proper procedure would have been to contact medical services through official channels. Which would have taken how long? 10 minutes? 20? Torin did not have that time. You cannot know that with certainty." Dennis stood up, frustrated. He was barely breathing. His blood chemistry was critical. Every minute mattered. If I had waited for proper channels, he would be dead. Perhaps. Or perhaps he would have improved on his own, and you traumatized a child and violated a dozen laws for nothing. Patricia stood as well. He would not have improved. The medical data clearly shows he was in acute crisis. Without intervention, he would have died. Vril turned its reflective gaze on her. "You treated an alien child with human medications. What if your treatment had killed him?" "It did not. But what if it had? You would have murdered a prince because you were too arrogant to admit you did not know what you were doing." "I did know what I was doing," Patricia said firmly. "I adapted established medical protocols to alien physiology. It worked. Prince Torn is alive because we acted, and that success makes you heroes in your own minds. But the law exists for a reason. We cannot have individuals deciding when to break rules based on their personal judgment. Dennis felt his anger rising. So following rules is more important than saving lives? Order is what keeps civilization from collapsing. If everyone ignored laws whenever they felt justified, we would have chaos. The argument continued for another hour. Vril asked the same questions in different ways, trying to find inconsistencies. Lynn defended Dennis while trying to work within the legal framework. Patricia provided medical evidence. None of it seemed to matter. Vril was not interested in whether Dennis had done the right thing, only whether he had followed proper procedure. Finally, the investigator left. Lynn slumped in her chair. How bad is it? Dennis asked. Bad. The council is split. Some species think you should be executed as an example. Others are uncomfortable with killing someone who saved a child. The trial will determine which side wins. When? 3 days. Drayson has been given that time to decide whether to formally accuse you or drop the charges. If he drops them, the council might let this go. If he presses charges, you will face the full weight of galactic law. Patricia put a hand on Dennis's shoulder. Torrin is recovering well. When he woke up earlier, he asked about you. He wanted to thank you. They let him talk to you? No, but I heard him asking his guardians. They told him to forget about the human who touched him inappropriately. Her voice was tight with anger. They are already rewriting what happened, making you the villain in their story. Dennis sat back down, feeling the weight of everything settling on him. He had saved a child's life. He knew that with absolute certainty. But knowing the truth and convincing the galaxy were two very different things. What do I do? He asked Lynn. Tell the truth at trial. Hope that the council values justice over politics. And pray that Emperor Drazen chooses gratitude over pride. That night, Dennis lay awake in his small detention room. Through the thin walls, he could hear other prisoners talking, arguing, crying. He thought about Torrin, about his own daughter Sarah, who he might never see again. About all those other Drakari children who were sick and being ignored. He had done the right thing. He knew that. He just hoped the galaxy would figure it out before they executed him for it. The council chamber was enormous, designed to accommodate hundreds of different species. Dennis stood in a small transparent cylinder at the center, surrounded by representatives from across the galaxy. Some looked like animals he recognized. Others were shapes he could not begin to describe. All of them were staring at him. The prosecutor, a being named Venth who resembled a 6-legged lizard with too many eyes, paced in front of the assembly. Its voice echoed through translation devices that turned its hissing speech into universal standard. This human violated our most sacred laws, Venth declared. He laid hands on a royal child without permission. He administered alien medical treatments without authorization. He ignored the commands of security personnel. Each of these crimes carries a death sentence. Together they demand it. The gallery was packed with spectators. Dennis could see the human section, small and isolated. Rodriguez was there. Other cleaners he worked with. Sarah had wanted to come, but Lynn had convinced her to stay on Earth. No reason for his daughter to watch him die. Venth continued. The defense will argue that Dennis Webb acted heroically, that he saved a life, but consider what he really did. He decided his judgment was superior to trained physicians. He decided galactic law did not apply to him. He decided that being human gave him special insight into alien biology. This is not heroism. This is dangerous arrogance. Several species in the gallery clicked or hummed in agreement. Dennis noticed that most of the positive reactions came from species that employed humans in service positions. They wanted to maintain the hierarchy, keep humans in their place. If we allow this behavior, Venth hissed, we tell every worker, every servant, every inferior species that they can ignore authority whenever they feel justified. Civilization itself depends on order. Webb destroyed order. He must be punished. The prosecutor sat down looking satisfied. Lynn Howard stood up for the defense looking small and nervous. Members of the council, my client did not destroy order. He exposed a flaw in our systems. She pulled up medical scans on the central display. Prince Torrin was dying. These readings prove it. Multiple organ systems were failing. Without intervention, he would have been dead within hours. The Drakari physicians found nothing wrong, Venth interrupted. The Drakari physicians were wrong. Lynn's voice got stronger, and this is not the first time. Dr. Okonkwo's research shows at least 15 Drakari children on this station exhibit similar symptoms. How many have died over the years because no one questioned the diagnosis? Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some species looked uncomfortable. Others looked angry. A representative from the Drakari section stood. Are you suggesting our medical personnel are incompetent? I am suggesting that cultural biases can blind even the most skilled professionals, Lin said carefully. The Drakari value strength. Admitting weakness is discouraged. This makes it difficult to recognize genuine medical emergencies in children. You insult our entire civilization. I am trying to save lives, including Drakari lives. The arguments continued for hours. Species after species testified. Some spoke about the importance of diplomatic protocols. Others discussed medical ethics. A few mentioned their own experiences with humans overstepping boundaries. Then Patricia took the stand. She presented her medical findings, explaining in simple terms how Dennis had recognized a condition that Drakari physicians had missed. She showed the treatment protocols they had used. She proved that Torin would have died without intervention. Venth attacked her credentials. You admit you have no training in alien biology? I have training in comparative physiology and emergency medicine. I understand how metabolic systems work across different species. So you made an educated guess just like Webb. I made a medical decision based on available data and years of experience. That is what doctors do. And if you had been wrong? If your human medications had killed the prince? Patricia met the prosecutor's gaze steadily. If I had done nothing, he would definitely be dead. I chose a chance at life over certain death. I would make that choice again. The prosecutor seemed frustrated. The medical evidence was too strong to dismiss. Venth changed tactics. Let us discuss Mr. Webb's motives. Perhaps he did believe the prince was sick. But why did he act? Was it truly compassion? Or did he see an opportunity to make himself important? To elevate his species by creating a debt with the Drakari Empire? Dennis felt his face burn. The question was absurd. He had not been thinking about politics when he grabbed Torin. He had just been trying to save a dying child. Before Lin could respond, the chamber doors opened. Emperor Drazen entered, filling the space with his presence. The entire assembly fell silent. I will testify, Drazen announced. The council leader, a floating being of pure energy, spoke. Your Majesty, you are not required to participate in these proceedings. I am required by honor. Drazen moved to the center of the chamber, near Dennis's containment cylinder. This human saved my son's life. That is not in dispute. The question is whether he should be punished for it. Venth spoke carefully. Your Majesty, we understand this situation is complicated by your personal feelings. However, the law must apply equally to all. The law. Drazen's voice was heavy. My people have a law too. We value strength above all. We teach our children that admitting pain is weakness, that only the soft need help. He paused. This law has killed many children, including my younger brother many years ago. He showed signs of illness. He was told to be strong. He died believing he was a disappointment. The silence in the chamber was absolute. I did not recognize the same pattern in Torin. Drazen continued. My own physicians did not see it. We were all blind because our culture taught us not to look. This human, this cleaner that we all dismissed as unimportant, he saw what we refused to see. And he acted when we would not. The Emperor looked directly at Dennis. I was angry when I found him treating my son. My pride was wounded. How dare a human question Drakari medicine? How dare he touch royalty? Drazen's voice softened. But my son was alive. My pride meant nothing compared to that. Your Majesty, Venth interjected, are you withdrawing your accusation? I am saying that Webb did what I should have done. He protected a child who everyone else had failed. If that is a crime, then I am guilty of far worse. I am guilty of nearly killing my own son through arrogance and blind tradition. One of the junior Drakari in the gallery stood suddenly. It was a young dragon, maybe Torin's age, scales showing the same discoloration Dennis had learned to recognize. I am sick too, the young Drakari said, voice shaking. I have been sick for weeks, but I was afraid to say anything. Father said warriors do not complain. I thought I was weak. I thought something was wrong with me. Another young Drakari stood. Me too, the thirst is so bad, and I am tired all the time. But I did not want to disappoint my family. More voices joined. Young Drakari across the gallery. all admitting to symptoms they had hidden out of fear and shame. Drazen looked at them all, his expression showing something Dennis had never expected to see on a dragon's face. Grief. How many? The Emperor whispered. How many children have we lost because we taught them that suffering in silence was strength? The chamber erupted in chaos. Species arguing, shouting, demanding order. Dennis stood in his cylinder, watching an empire confront its own failures. The council leader finally restored silence. This testimony has given us much to consider. We will adjourn until tomorrow to discuss the verdict. As guards led Dennis back to detention, he caught a glimpse of Torin in the gallery. The young prince was staring at him with wide, grateful eyes. Tomorrow, the council would decide if saving that child's life was worth Dennis's own. He hoped they chose wisely. Dennis walked through the station corridors without guards for the first time in 2 weeks. The council had voted narrowly to acquit him of assault charges, though they had officially reprimanded him for breaking protocol. He was banned from the residential wings where diplomats lived. His cleaning job had been reassigned to the industrial sectors only. But he was alive and free. The news feeds had been talking about nothing else for days. The human who saved a prince. The Dragon Empire confronting its treatment of sick children. Galaxy-wide debates about cultural practices and medical rights. Dennis just wanted to go back to being invisible. He found Patricia in the human medical bay, surrounded by equipment that had not been there before. New scanners, diagnostic tools, medication synthesizers, all top quality. Donations. Patricia explained when she saw him looking. Turns out a lot of species suddenly care about human medical capabilities. Funny how that works. She did not sound amused. How is Torin? Recovering well. They are following my treatment protocols now, most of the time. She pulled up records on her display. We have identified 19 Drakari children with the condition so far. All receiving treatment. Emperor Drazen has ordered mandatory health screenings for all young dragons in the Empire. That is good. It is. But the conservative faction is furious. They are calling Drazen weak, saying he is corrupting Drakari culture by coddling children. Patricia looked tired. Change is hard, even when lives are at stake. Dennis knew that feeling. He had received hundreds of messages. Some thanked him. Many more called him arrogant, dangerous, a threat to galactic order. Several species had formally requested that all humans be banned from medical work. Earth's government was trying to use the attention to negotiate better positions for humans, but progress was slow. Ambassador Howard wants to see you, Patricia said. Something about a job offer. Dennis found Lynn in her small office, looking less exhausted than usual. She actually smiled when he entered. Good news for once, she said. The council has created a new position. Special medical liaison for cross-species youth health. They want someone to develop protocols for recognizing medical emergencies across different biologies. Someone who can work with multiple species to improve care for children. That sounds like a big job. It is. They are offering it to you. Dennis stared at her. I am a janitor. You were a janitor. You were also a pediatric nurse who saved a prince's life and exposed a crisis that was killing children across an entire empire. That makes you uniquely qualified. Lynn leaned back. The pay is good. You would have actual authority, and you would be helping children galaxy-wide. What about the ban on the residential wings? Lifted if you accept. You would need access to all areas for medical purposes. It should have been an easy decision. More money. Better work. Respect instead of contempt. But Dennis thought about the quiet of third shift, the simplicity of cleaning floors, not being the center of attention. Can I think about it? He asked. Of course. But do not take too long. Half the galaxy wants to hire you and the other half wants you gone. We need to make a decision while we have leverage. Dennis left the office and found himself walking toward the gardens where he had first noticed Torin was sick. They had not banned him from there, at least. The artificial stars glowed on the ceiling. The plants grew in careful arrangements. You are difficult to find. Dennis turned to see Emperor Drazen ducking through the garden entrance. The massive dragon looked out of place among the delicate plants, but he moved carefully, avoiding crushing anything. Your Majesty, I did not expect to see you here. I have been looking for you. You avoid the areas where I might find you. I thought you might still be angry. Drazen settled onto the ground, scales scraping softly against stone. I was angry. At you, at my physicians, at myself. Mostly at myself. He was quiet for a moment. May I ask you something? Of course. Why did you help Torin? You knew the risks. You could have walked away. Most beings would have. Dennis sat on a nearby bench. I have a daughter, Sarah. She is about Torin's age. If she was sick and everyone ignored her, I would hope someone would care enough to help. Even if helping meant death. Especially then. What kind of universe do we live in if we let children die because we are afraid of consequences? Drazen was silent for a long time. I have been emperor for 30 years. I have led fleets, negotiated treaties, conquered star systems, but I could not see my own son was dying, because my culture taught me not to look. Culture is not always right, Dennis said quietly. Sometimes it takes an outsider to see what needs to change. You know my people are divided now. Half support the medical reforms, half say I am destroying everything that makes us strong. Are you? I do not know anymore. For generations we believed that hardship makes warriors, that coddling weakness creates soft soldiers. But how many children did we lose to prove that point? How many sons and daughters died while we called it strength? Drazen's voice was rough. My brother, Torin, all the others. What did their deaths prove except that we were too proud to admit we were wrong? You are changing things now. That matters, does it? Or am I just creating new problems? The Emperor looked at Dennis. Some nobles are threatening rebellion. They say allowing weakness will destroy the Empire. Perhaps they are right. Or perhaps, Dennis said carefully, teaching children that asking for help is acceptable will create a generation that lives long enough to become the warriors you need. You cannot fight if you are dead. Drazen made a sound that might have been a laugh. My advisors would hate how simple you make it sound. Sometimes simple is what we need. They sat in silence for a while. Eventually Drazen spoke again. Torin wants to meet you, properly, not while unconscious on a medical table. Would you be willing? Of course. He has been asking about humans, about Earth, about what kind of people produce someone who would risk everything for a stranger's child. Drazen's tone was careful. He admires you. That is unusual for a Drakari to admire someone outside our species, especially a human. I am not anyone special. You saved my son. That makes you more important than most of the generals and admirals I command. The Emperor stood, his massive form blocking out the artificial stars. I have something for you. He pulled out a small medallion, scales engraved with what Dennis assumed was writing. This is an Imperial protection token. Anyone who harms you will answer to me personally. It also grants you access to any Drakari facility in the Empire, including my court. Dennis took the medallion carefully. It was warm, like it had been held close to dragon fire. Thank you. It is a small repayment for a debt I can never truly settle. Drazen moved toward the exit, then paused. The Council offered you a position, yes? Working with children across species? They did. Take it. The galaxy needs people who will break rules when rules are wrong. We have too many who follow orders and not enough who question them. Is that advice from an emperor? It is advice from a father who nearly lost his son because he valued tradition over truth. After Drazen left, Dennis sat alone in the garden, holding the medallion and thinking about choices. He could take the new position, help more children, make a real difference. Or he could go back to cleaning floors and being invisible. His communicator buzzed. A message from Sarah. Dad, I saw the news. I am so proud of you. Whatever you decide to do next, I know you will help people. That is who you are, Dennis smiled. His daughter was right. Helping people was who he was. Whether he did it with a mop or a medical scanner did not matter. The important thing was doing it. He sent a message to Lynn Howard. 3 words. I accept the position. Then he went to find Torin. There was a young prince who wanted to talk about humans, and Dennis was ready to show him that compassion was not weakness. It was the strongest thing anyone could offer. 3 months had passed since the trial. Dennis stood in his small office reviewing reports from across the galaxy. Medical facilities from 20 different species had requested consultations. Children who would have been dismissed as weak or attention-seeking were now receiving proper care. The numbers were stark. In the Drakari Empire alone, child mortality rates had dropped by 40%, but not everyone was happy about it. His communicator buzzed with an urgent message from Patricia. Dennis, get to the human medical bay immediately, emergency. He ran through the corridors, his new security clearance opening doors that had been locked to him before. When he burst into the medical bay, he found Patricia working frantically over an examination table. On the table was Torin. What happened? Dennis moved to her side. Reaction to the new medication formulation. The Drakari physicians adjusted the dosage without consulting me. They said they knew better. Patricia's hands were shaking as she worked. His body is rejecting it. Multiple organ stress. I cannot stabilize him. Dennis looked at Torin's face. The young prince's scales were the wrong color again, his breathing rapid and shallow. Just like the first time, but this was different. This was not metabolic failure. This was acute toxicity. Did you try the reversal agent? It is not working fast enough. Dennis, I think someone gave him the wrong medication deliberately. The words hung in the air like poison. Dennis grabbed a scanner and ran it over Torin's body chemistry. The readings made his blood run cold. The medication in Torin's system was not just wrong. It was incompatible with his biology. No trained physician would make this mistake. Someone tried to kill him. The conservative Drakari faction has been making threats. They want to stop the reforms. What better way than to make it look like human medicine failed? Patricia pulled up records. The medication was administered by one of the court physicians, the same ones who insisted nothing was wrong with Torin originally. Dennis made a decision. Get me everything we used the first time. We are starting over. Flush his system and treat this like the original crisis. That will take hours. He might not have hours. Then we work fast. They fell into the rhythm they had developed months ago, Patricia handling the technical aspects while Dennis monitored Torin's responses and adjusted treatments based on the subtle changes he had learned to recognize. The young dragon's physiology was unique, not quite like other Drakari children they had treated. Understanding those differences was what made Dennis good at this work. The door burst open. But it was not Emperor Drazen this time. It was Sethra, Torin's guardian, along with 4 other Drakari warriors. They looked furious. Step away from the prince, Sethra commanded. He is dying, Dennis said without looking up. Give us time. You have poisoned him with your human treatments. This is what happens when we trust inferior species with important matters. Patricia moved to block their approach. The poison came from your own physicians. We are trying to save him. Lies. You killed him to make us look weak. One of the warriors raised a weapon. Dennis felt his heart racing but forced himself to stay focused on Torin. If he stopped now, the child would die. And then these warriors would definitely kill him. His only chance was success. Shoot me if you want, Dennis said. But wait until I finish. If I am wrong, I will be dead anyway. If I am right, you will have to explain to Emperor Drazen why you stopped me from saving his son a second time. Sethra hesitated. The weapon stayed raised but did not fire. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Dennis worked with absolute focus, everything else fading away. This was what he was good at. Not politics, not speeches, not being a symbol. Just helping a sick child get better. One treatment at a time. One breath at a time. Torin's reading started to improve. His breathing slowed. His scales began regaining their color. It is working, Patricia breathed. Dennis did not celebrate. Not yet. The crisis was passing. But they needed to fully flush the toxins and make sure no permanent damage had occurred. He kept working, adjusting medications, monitoring responses. Finally, after 2 hours, Torin's eyes fluttered open. The young prince looked confused, then saw Dennis and managed a weak smile. You came again. Of course I did. Sethra lowered her weapon. She looked shaken, her earlier certainty crumbling. How did you know what to do? Because I paid attention the first time. Because I learned what worked for him specifically, not just what the textbook said should work. Dennis stood up, facing the warriors. And because I actually wanted him to live, not just prove a point about strength. You accuse us of trying to kill him. I accuse someone of giving him the wrong medication. Whether that was incompetence or malice, I do not know. But I know it almost killed him. Emperor Drazen arrived then, moving so fast he nearly broke through the doorway. His eyes went immediately to Torin, then to Dennis, then to the warriors with weapons. Explain, Drazen commanded. Sethra spoke quickly in the Drakari language. Dennis could not understand the words, but her body language showed distress, confusion, shame. Drazen responded in a voice that made the walls shake. Then he switched to Universal Standard. The physician who administered the medication has fled the station. He left a message claiming that true Drakari should not bow to human medicine. That Torin's death would prove the reforms were wrong. But Torin is not dead, Dennis said quietly. No. Because you saved him. Again. Drazen looked at his son, then at Dennis. I thought having you train others would spread your knowledge. Make the Empire safer. I did not realize how many of my own people would rather see children die than admit humans might know something valuable. Not all your people, Patricia said. We have been getting messages from young Drakari medical students who want to learn. They see that the old ways were not working. Change is happening, slowly. Too slowly. Drazen made a sound of frustration. How many more attempts will there be? How many times can I ask you to risk your life for my son? Dennis looked at Torin, who was holding onto his hand with surprising strength for someone who had nearly died. As many times as needed. That is what you do for children, any children. Even when those children belong to people who hate you. Especially then. Because maybe if I keep doing it, eventually they will understand that helping people is not about politics or pride. It is just the right thing to do. Drazen was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke to Sethra in Drakari. She bowed and left with the other warriors. I have assigned new guards to Torin. Ones who understand that protecting him means more than teaching him to be strong. It means keeping him alive long enough to become whatever he chooses to be. Drazen looked at Dennis. I have also issued an imperial decree. Any Drakari who harms you will be considered an enemy of the Empire. You are under my personal protection. Thank you, but that might make things worse. Your people already think you favor humans too much. Then they will learn that an emperor who cannot protect those who save his son's life is not worth following. Drazen's voice was firm. Let them challenge me. I am ready. Over the following weeks, there were challenges. 3 Drakari nobles tried to organize opposition to Drazen's reforms. But young Drakari who had been treated successfully spoke out. Parents whose children were alive because of the new protocols supported the emperor. The galaxy watched as an ancient warrior culture struggled with change. Dennis continued his work, traveling to different species to establish medical protocols. Patricia's coalition grew to include physicians from 40 different worlds. They were making a difference, one child at a time. Torin recovered fully from the poisoning attempt. He announced his intention to study medicine formally, shocking the imperial court. But Drazen supported him, declaring that healing was as honorable as fighting. The young prince visited Dennis often, helping with patient files and asking endless questions about human medicine. They had formed an unlikely friendship, the former janitor and the dragon prince. To outsiders it looked strange, but to them it made perfect sense. One day, while reviewing reports together, Torin asked, "Why do humans care so much about people they do not know? Most species only protect their own kind." Dennis thought about it. Maybe because humans know what it is like to be weak. We are not the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced, so we learned that survival means helping each other. Even strangers, even people who are different from us. That is a good way to live. It is the only way I know how to live. Torin smiled, his golden scales catching the light. Then I am glad you are human. Because if you were Drakari, you might not have seen me as worth saving. Every child is worth saving, Dennis said firmly. That is not a human belief. That is just truth. The young prince nodded, returning to his work with new determination. Dennis looked out the window at the station, at the ships coming and going, at the vast galaxy beyond. He had started as a janitor trying to pay for his daughter's education. He had become something more, not because he wanted glory or recognition, but because when he saw a child who needed help, he could not walk away. That was enough. That would always be enough. And if the galaxy had learned anything from his actions, it was that compassion was not weakness. It was the foundation of civilization, the thing that separated survival from true living. Dennis Webb had taught the dragons that lesson. Now he would spend the rest of his life teaching it to anyone else who would listen, one sick child at a time.